Hey everybody, thank you for clicking on this video. Today it's just going to be me, it's just going to be Luke. Michael is not here. This is going to be a solo vid from myself. In fact, it's my first solo vid on this channel. And so yeah, I hope you enjoy. Today we're going to be talking about Keir Starmer and is he in trouble as Labour leader? You see, at the start of the year, me and Michael made predictions about 2021, political predictions, and I said I thought Keir Starmer might be replaced. Basically, I didn't think he was any good. He just seemed like an empty suit. He in the 9 months he had been leader didn't seem to have any ideas or a clear vision, and I thought, well, this might mean he's replaced sometime this year or before the next general election. And in fact, recently there has been a bit of buzz around Starmer not being good enough. Questions are being asked about his leadership ability, and to me this confirms everybody should always pay attention to what I say. But all of this buzz seems to have started, at least in my opinion, from this article in The Guardian from the 3rd of February. Leak reveals Labour plan to focus on flag and patriotism to win back voters. It describes what a report indicated Labour must do to win a majority. And so I found this article quite interesting, so let's get into it. Let's see what it says. Labour must make, quote, use of the Union flag, veterans and dressing smartly as part of a radical rebranding to help it win back the trust of disillusioned voters, according to a leaked internal strategy presentation. The presentation is aimed at what the party calls foundation seats, a new term for the Red Wall constituencies that handed Boris Johnson a landslide in 2019, and other seats it fears could also turn blue. It will be seen as a marker of how concerned Labour is about its electoral position. The strategy is yet to be shared with most MPs or staffers, and Labour Party managers are understood to be preparing a redacted version because of its, quote, sensitivity. Some party officials who have seen the presentation are alarmed by the language, believing the leadership has not reckoned with the nationalistic sentiments it invokes. Yes, I would agree with that wholeheartedly. Let's continue though. Labour's new strategy is based on extensive focus groups from Watford to Grimsby, conducted in September alongside nationwide polling. The findings are being briefed to some politicians and senior staffers, and already appear to be shaping Labour's communications and policy making. The presentation suggests that displays of patriotism are needed to reinforce that the party has changed. One slide says, belonging needs to be reinforced through all messages, while another is headed, communicating Labour's respect and commitment for the country can represent a change in the party's body language. Among the top recommendations is the use of flag, veterans, dressing smartly at the War Memorial, etc., give voters a sense of authentic values alignment. Approached for a response, a senior Labour official said the language came from the agency's research rather than their own phrasing. And to that I'd say yes, the words authentic value alignment is the most consultancy-ish phrase I have ever heard. But how about the advice? A top recommendation is dress smartly. I mean, really? It's that easy? I mean, make sure you do your top button up and tuck in your shirt, and you'll have the red wall back in no time, apparently. I just have to ask, how much did Labour pay this agency? I mean, whatever it was, I think it was probably too much. But anyway, let's continue. In WhatsApp messages sent within hours of one briefing, senior officials ordered, please prioritise the Union Jack header images, not the plain red ones. Great, this just keeps getting better, doesn't it? The strategy warns the party to brace for a backlash from Scots and younger Remain voters, especially ahead of the Holyrood elections in May. Yes, I think this is definitely going to be the case, and there is actually evidence of this already, which we'll look at later on in this video. The strategy accepts that Labour has excluded and ignored once core voters, which the presentation appears to blame on Jeremy Corbyn's leadership, under which the party is described as a party of protest, expressing unpatriotic sentiments with arrogance and idealism. But this is in contrast to last year's election inquiry by party heavyweights such as Ed Miliband, described the cause somewhat differently, concluding the loss of votes was a consequence of issues of alienation stretching back decades. I mean, I would include that would be the correct analysis as well. Like Ed Miliband, I would say, Labour not focusing on those areas under New Labour and leaving them to rot, basically, probably has had a pretty big effect of, I guess, Red Wall constituencies' opinions on Labour. And I would also suspect that the right wing of the Labour Party were not happy with this analysis because it shifted the blame from Jeremy Corbyn and onto themselves, and probably decided to get their own research, which just happened to say that, Labour should ditch quote-unquote Corbynism, because of course Corbynism means arrogance and idealism, naturally, and instead, let's wave some flags around, while not focusing at all on the underlying material economic conditions in these areas. How convenient for them. But here's the thing though, this strategy will not work. These people already have a party to vote for, it's the Conservative Party. When these voters say they want Labour to be more patriotic, what they mean when they say patriotism is that they want to see a powerful military, harsh border controls, and a strong internal repression of non-British people that leads to the dominance of Britain over the whole planet and of British people over foreigners. That bit is crucial. It's pure nationalism that they are after, and these voters are going to trust Priti Patel to do that a hell of a lot more than Labour, despite the fact that Starmer may dress nicely at a war memorial and have a British flag in his Twitter bio. And like I said, I think this article was what triggered the questions about Starmer's leadership, because after this report came out on the 2nd of February, just 4 days later, on the 6th, a new poll came out from Observation, showing Labour dropping to 33%, as you can see, shedding 5% and just 1% ahead of Corbyn's 2019 score, where he got 32% of the overall vote. Noticeably, the Conservatives also lost 1% in the poll. As you can see, the loss from Labour came from their voters going to the Greens, Lib Dems and SNP. And this, of course, is what the report kind of promised, that Labour could face a backlash from Scots and Young Remainer voters. Well, that appears to be exactly what has happened. So why the hell did they do it? There was also a more recent poll conducted by YouGov showing now 29% of Labour voters think Starmer is doing a bad job, with only 50% who do. Now here's the thing, I don't think it would be disastrous or even necessarily bad if, Keir Starmer was only 6 points behind the Conservatives like that Observation poll showed, considering that the Conservatives have just won an election about 14 months ago and Starmer's only been opposition leader for a year. But that year he has been opposition leader in has been an unusual year, of course. And here's the thing, I'm sure everyone is aware of this, Starmer has been the opposition to a Conservative government who are responsible for one of the highest death tolls in the world regarding the coronavirus. Now, you would assume his polling numbers will not be that bad considering this, but the public clearly does not think Starmer would be doing a better job than Boris Johnson. Take this quote from a Labour frontbencher. Mr Johnson may also be the undeserving beneficiary of low expectations of government. There's a general cynicism about politicians as a class, comments one veteran of the Labour frontbench. When we criticise the government, people often respond, "You lot wouldn't have done any better." So remember that. Also, there's this poll from Observation in January that says 53% of the public blame the public and only 33% blame the government for the COVID situation in the UK. Now, why is that the case? Why does the public not want to blame Johnson for the COVID pandemic, the UK being one of the worst countries in the world, and also don't think Starmer would have done any better? Well, the Tories having the press in their back pocket certainly is a factor, no doubt about it. But also, Labour under Starmer have completely failed to pin responsibility of the pandemic onto the Conservatives. Starmer has instead been incredibly passive with the issue. Just look at this article he wrote in the Daily Mail. The title is, "Let's harness the spirit that has made us the envy of the world to get every child back to school." And if you want to read the article, it does not critique the government's failures on schools, and instead reads like it could have been written by one of Boris Johnson's cabinet. It is a crazy article, really, considering that it's written by the leader of the opposition, during which the government he is opposing has botched schools. Also, I remember there was this interview with Labour's Jonathan Ashworth in January, who criticised Rishi Sunak's absurd Eat Out to Help Out scheme, and quite rightly, by the way. The interviewer then asked him whether he opposed it at the time, and Ashworth had to concede that no, he didn't. Because Starmer's Labour seemingly has a policy of never criticising the government until it is safe to do so. And unsurprisingly, the public sees that and has no confidence Labour wouldn't have made the same mistakes as the Conservatives. Right? Makes sense. And this isn't to do with COVID, but again, last month Boris Johnson actually criticised Keir Starmer for not holding him to account as well as Marcus Rashford regarding free school meals.
I don't think anybody in this House is happy with the disgraceful images that we've seen of the food parcels that have been offered. They are appalling. They're an insult to the families that have received them. And I'm grateful, by the way, to Marcus Rashford, who highlighted the issue and is doing quite an effective job by comparison with the right honourable gentleman in holding the government to account for.
So yeah, that right there was the PM admitting that he hasn't done a good enough job, and correctly insulting the opposition leader for not stating how bad a job he is doing. I don't know how you could sum up Keir Starmer's awful opposition any better than that. Also, there was a larger factor at play. For the last 5 years, when Corbyn was leader, right-wing Labour Party members went on TV and radio stating that Labour was in turmoil and also maybe controlled by people who admired the Gestapo. I mean, who knows? That might have served them well in getting rid of Corbyn, but the public isn't up to date with the factional disputes going on within Labour. They just hear Labour MPs trashing their own party and think, well, what a mess Labour is in, eh? And that strategy is going to hurt them for the next few years. But then again, they would probably still say, yeah, it was worth it to get rid of Corbyn. So, overall, despite the pandemic, Starmer isn't cutting through. He just has seemingly not wanted to oppose the government in any meaningful way. And the question I'm going to ask now is, well, why? And this is a bit off the overall topic of the video, but I do think it's interesting. I think the reason that Starmer has been so passive and what has led to these low poll numbers, considering where he should be given the government's chaotic handling of the pandemic, because the great opinion columnists of the UK, unfortunately it seems, have a rather large influence over Keir Starmer. And this is possibly because they were very helpful, these pundits, in getting rid of Corbyn, for Starmer to become leader, of course, or he doesn't want to upset them because he's seen what happens when they don't like a Labour leader. And what don't these pundits like? They don't like it when the government is challenged in a serious and a substantive way. They view it as silly and pathetic. I think this line of thinking can be demonstrated best with this column by Jake Richards in Prospect UK. It is called In Defence of Keir Starmer. The subheading is, by the way, the commentariat seems to be turning against the Labour leader. Fortunately, his concern is the voters outside Westminster. And that subheading it's laughable, since I have only seen mild criticism of Starmer, but the fact that Richards views that as pundits, quote, turning against Starmer, kind of shows how much he's liked overall, I think. But anyway, here is a bit from the article I'd like to focus on, where Richards is defending Starmer for not attacking Johnson and the Tories. Quote, shrill pronouncements from the opposition amid a global pandemic would not sit well, especially while polling shows that a majority do not put the blame at the government's door, and are more sympathetic given the unprecedented nature of the threat. Starmer's more grown-up approach to politics successfully contrasts with the years under Corbyn, who called for resignations, general elections, and national strikes on what seemed like a weekly basis, and whose brand of politics often portrays all Tories as evil or stupid. I like that he can write this after we have seen a pandemic response from the Tories, which does confirm more than anything ever could probably that they are either evil or stupid. But this was Corbyn's biggest crime for these pundits, actually exposing how rotten the Tories and British politics actually are. These pundits who work in British politics have to convince themselves every day that what they do is worthwhile, and they're not actually part of a hollow, pathetic game. Corbyn wants someone who took a serious approach to politics, and they couldn't have that. Also, these pundits may not be Tories, but they are definitely friends with them, and of course accurately calling them evil would just not be sensible and childish, you see, because these people are my friends. So yeah, let's stick with Keir Starmer's approach of not calling a spade, and then I'll be a lot happier with him. And that's the unfortunate reality, though. This is Starmer's approach. Labour under him are the quote-unquote pundit party. They have taken their strategy from them, which is why I reckon Lib Dem voters now view Starmer more favourably compared to Labour voters, as you can see from the graphic. A quite staggering statistic, really, but maybe not surprising given how the Lib Dems are the party of sensible centrists, kind of like how Keir Starmer likes to portray himself as. But back to the main topic. Is Starmer in trouble? Because right now, he is doing quite shit. I mean, look, he has had no bad press, the opinion columnists like him, the government has handled COVID in a way which probably couldn't have been worse, and he still isn't doing well in the polls. So, is there a chance that Starmer could go? Well, here's the thing, I think it's unlikely, since the right-wing Labour faction, of which Starmer has clearly aligned himself with, don't really care about winning elections and poll numbers more than they care about getting rid of the left-wing faction in Labour. And if Starmer is forced to step down, if he's not doing too well in the polls, there is a chance that a left-wing leader could be elected in Starmer's place as leader. This is because a left-wing MP would get enough votes to qualify for the leadership contest, and then a members' vote would decide on the next leader. And the likelihood of Rebecca Long-Bailey or Clive Lewis winning is probably too high for Starmer to be shivved by right-wing Labour MPs. However, if these MPs can get, say, Rachel Reeves or Yvette Cooper in as leader, then I think the Labour right will happily boot Starmer, although, like I said, I think that's probably unlikely. I believe, however, even though it is unlikely that Starmer will get the boot, he has attempted to appease these right-wing Labour members by hiring Peter Mandelson to make sure the Labour right know he's on their side and to stick with him just in case they are thinking of getting rid. The thing with Mandelson is he is somebody who is incredibly unpopular, is liked by nobody apart from the right wing of the Labour Party. Hiring him, I would not say is an election-winning move because, well, just look at this headline. Probably not the best thing to have someone in your party who has been hanging out and calling it Jeffrey Epstein. And of course, this is something that can easily be exploited by the Tories if they want to. I mean, Jeffrey Epstein, probably the world's most famous paedophile. Yeah, not a great move if you want to be winning votes. But basically, as long as Starmer does what this right-wing faction wants, I think he'll be safe. And therefore, kind of perversely, the worse he does in the polls, the more likely it is he will be defended by these people, as the Labour right know that there is a chance that if he had to resign, a member of the left wing of the party would take his place as leader, and that would be the worst possible outcome for them. They've just gotten rid of Jeremy Corbyn. They do not want someone like him in again. All those years of plotting against him, just to see after 1 year of Starmer in charge, they're back to square one. No, that would be the worst thing. Therefore, it doesn't matter how badly Starmer does in these polls. He can poll at 33% or 23%. If the main priority of Labour under Starmer is to boot out the left, that's all the right wing need to keep him. All the flag and patriotism bullshit and pandering to old, possibly racist Red Wall voters is something the Labour right wing will gladly go along with, no matter how stupid it is and how bad a strategy it is, if it drives out Corbyn supporting members to, say, the Green Party. There was an example of this kind of thinking seen in an article in Labour List recently. Quote, focusing on helping first-time buyers risks alienating older voters in Red Wall seats. Yeah, we would love to help our young voters with this social democratic policy, but it will just upset the people that we are trying to win over by dressing smartly in a Union Jack suit. Sorry, bad luck, we're going to have to bin that. Oh, you're voting for the Green Party now, and you're not involved in the Labour Party anymore? And you are a former Corbyn supporter? Oh, how sad. Oh, well, yeah, unfortunate that we couldn't keep you, I guess. And that right there is what I expect to see more of going forward. Now, Starmer has given a speech yesterday which he says he intends to show how the Conservatives' path of austerity is the wrong one. And that was encouraging. I did like that. And it does show he is perhaps actually serious about tackling the problem in front of him, actually winning an election. But at the end of the day, if it's just one speech and not an overall strategy, it won't make much of a difference. But overall, to finish on the video, I'd say that, despite the numbers, despite the bad poll results, despite the questions, as long as Starmer keeps the right wing of the Labour Party on side, I don't think they're going to move him. I think Starmer is going to be Labour leader for a while yet. And yeah, thanks for listening to this video, just from me today. Hope you enjoyed, and yeah, here's Shia LaBeouf.
Do it! Just